Good afternoon, Maya.
Hello.
Before we get started, I want to tell you that I'm very sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
I wanted to just kind of walk you through a few timeline events. You might be able to help us with these. So from the time period let me ask you first about when you first went to All Children's Hospital after you had the event on July 3rd. Do you remember whether you were walking or in a wheelchair then?
On July 3rd, so this is like the first time I went in for asthma?
Yeah, so it looks like you went to All Children's the first time on July 6, 2015.
Okay.
First, you had your incident at home on July 3rd, and then you went to Sarasota Memorial Hospital, right? And then they took you to All Children's for the pediatric work on July 6th. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Do you remember whether you were walking or in a wheelchair?
I believe I was walking at the time.
Okay. Well, let me ask you, Clay, if you can put up Joint Exhibit 1007-26. And at the top where it says triage arrival, and it says mobility wheelchair, does this refresh your recollection as to whether you would have been in a wheelchair at that time?
I know they pushed me in a wheelchair. I had weakness of muscles, but at this point in time, it wasn't like I was confined to a wheelchair at home as well. Sorry, I misunderstood your question.
Okay. And Clay, you can take that down. Just sort of fast forwarding this a little bit. From that time, around July 6th, 2015, until October 7th, 2016, you were in a wheelchair over that period of time. Is that fair?
I was.
Okay. And just for comparison's sake, I know we'll talk later about your bravery and your perseverance to get on crutches, but you weren't even using crutches during that time period, were you?
No, but I was working my way up to that point.
So sometimes it's easier for me to sort of separate this by school year. For you, fourth grade would have been August 2015 until May 2016, age 9. Is that about right?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. And you were out of school for that year, correct?
I believe, yes, I was out in fourth grade, yes.
Okay. And then also all of fifth grade from August 2016 until May 2017, you were out of school as well. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Let me ask you, we got to see some photos of you. Let me ask you about, Clay, do you have access to Joint Exhibit 2530-41?
I'm sorry to interrupt. Maya informed me she's a bit hungry. I would just like to have her get this
What-
chocolate milk.
It's fine.
And Maya, would you like to take a break while you have a bite to eat?
If it doesn't bother anybody, I could just drink this here, but
Okay. That doesn't bother me at all, but let me know if you need a break, okay? This picture is dated May 21st, 2016.
yes,
Okay. And I think your testimony, you were feeling pretty good at that time?
correct.
Okay.
I was getting the ketamine infusions, which lowered my pain, therefore I was feeling pretty good.
Okay. Clay, if you can pull up Joint Exhibit 1052-16. This, just to represent to you, this is the first note from Dr. Spiegel. He's the one who did the hyperbaric treatment with you.
Okay.
And this note was dictated 4 days earlier on May 17th, 2016. And it notes that your exam had to be cut short due to your inability to be examined. It appears there was a lot of change in your condition back and forth depending on the day. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's the nature of CRPS, and a lot of CRPS patients would report the same.
Okay. So the photo that counsel showed to the jury you feeling good one day. 4 days earlier, you were in so much pain that the exam had to be cut short. Is that fair?
Correct.
Okay. And let me ask you about another one. And I remember that counsel showed you that by the end of July, I think it was July 28th, there was a video of you dancing to Meghan Trainor, I think.
Yes.
Okay. Let's take a look at Joint Exhibit 1028-0020. That's in evidence. That's one of the therapy notes. And at the top, it says Daily Note, July 27th, 2018. And this was the therapist that you were working with. Do you see under the current complaints, I guess my question to you, Maya, is this accurate? That the day before you had reported constant whole body pain, greatest in upper extremity and lower extremity?
Is this note the day before of the video?
Yes, the day before.
Yeah, that's accurate. When I went to Dr. Hannah's, normally I had an infusion and therapy, and the infusions did help a lot,
Okay.
my pain.
So, and just so I understand your answer, the day before you were reporting constant pain, whole body pain, greatest in upper extremities and lower extremities, a combination of burning, aching, intermittent stabbing pain, generally exacerbated with movement activities, but the next day you were able to perform the activities that we saw in the video.
Well, again, when I was administered those ketamine infusions, I did feel better after and was able to perform different movements that I wouldn't be able to without the medication.
Okay, so I think that you saw yeah. Do you know if you had ketamine infusions between July 27th and July 28th?
I'm not exactly certain on what days, but again, CRPS is very different on different days, and it's very hard to believe, and I understand that, but that's just how CRPS is.
Okay. So the jury heard a couple times, and you've been brave enough to share with us the discussion about the relapse after you were told that you had to go back to school sometime in August. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Okay. In the weeks leading up to going to All Children's, you would agree with me that you were in some of the worst pain of your life. Is that fair?
I was in a lot of pain, but it wasn't comparable to what the pain I was experiencing prior to the prolonged ketamine sedation in Mexico. So yes, I had relapses, and yes, they were very intense and scary still, but it wasn't as bad as how it was before the Mexico trip.
So is your recollection that in the week or so leading up to All Children's and the end of September, early October, that your pain was getting better?
No, I still had pain. I did have the relapse, but that doesn't mean ketamine doesn't work. It's just the disease itself.
Let me show you Joint Exhibit 1040-249. This is from September 29th, 2016, and if you can expand this a little bit, Clay, down on the handwriting. I guess my first question to you, Maya, is that your handwriting or is that your mom's?
That's not my handwriting.
Okay. Do you know if that's your mother's handwriting?
It looks like my mom's.
Okay. If you remember, is what your mother wrote here accurate, meaning another bad night, difficulty sleeping due to pain, 8 out of 10?
Yeah, that would correspond with my relapse at the end of September.
And that you had anxiety and depression, crying and demanding ketamine. Is that accurate with what you remember?
I wanted ketamine because that's what had worked for me in the past. It wasn't like, oh, I need ketamine, right this instant, give it to me. It's more so, I know that works, so I would like to have it.
Okay. At the end of the note, it says ketamine was given every 3 hours. Do you know, does that refer to your mom giving you ketamine at home?
My mom did not give me ketamine at home. It was only oral ketamine that was administered at home.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to imply that. The ketamine here, your mom would have given you oral ketamine at home, right?
I don't remember if she did or not, but looking at the note.
Okay. Let me ask you about Joint Exhibit 1040-233. And I think the jury's seen this before, but is this an accurate reflection of what the condition you were in before you went to All Children's? Quality of life, non-functional?
With the relapse, yes, I was staying in bed a lot, and I did feel hopeless because I was getting a lot better, had the relapse, and I really thought I would be able to walk soon, and the relapse happened.
I'm sure it was frustrating. Let me ask you about 1040-234. And again, this is from a little less than 48 hours before you came to All Children's on October 7th. Is this your writing where it says no sleep, pain 24/7, hell on earth?
No, that's not my handwriting.
Okay. The check boxes, are those filled in by you or your mom? Do you know?
I think my mom probably would have filled it out, but she asked me.
Okay. So this would be accurate information based on what you had given your mother on October 5th, fair?
Correct.
Okay. So let me ask you a little bit about some of your time at All Children's, and I'm sure it was tough at times, but let me ask you about some things that you wrote in your journal, which is Trial Exhibit 2364, 005. You had a nurse named Amanda. You wrote a heart behind your name. Do you remember what it was that you liked about Amanda?
Yeah, I put a heart in front of her name. Amanda was pretty sweet to me. I'm not saying that all the people at Johns Hopkins are bad, because there are certainly some people who had kind hearts, and Amanda was one of them.
Okay. There was an Amanda Cook who was your nurse from October 18th through December 26th. Is that the one that you think you're referring to?
If I'm being honest, a lot of the nurses, they had the same name, so I don't want to say yes just because I'm not for certain.
Okay. Let me ask you about a couple others. It's a Trial Exhibit 2364-008, and this is also from your care journal. People you really liked at the hospital. It was a while ago, so let me see if I can help. Do you remember Kaylee, the first one being Kaylee Gay, a patient care technician?
No, so I have to explain this one a little bit. So in my hospital room, there's a big whiteboard in front of me, and there were names of people who were taking care of me. I just filled out the journal and I put their names in there. And part of the reason that I listed a lot of people was because I thought if they knew I liked them, they would let me go home.
Okay. Well, you listed somebody named Barb. That was Barb Flatten. She was your nurse in November. Do you remember what you liked about her?
It's hard to remember. Some of them, they weren't as regular as the other nurses. Like, I remember Amanda and I remember Lindsay, but the rest of them I'm not very familiar with.
Okay. There was one, you put Victoria Pagano. Well, I'll tell you her last name was Pagano. Victoria. She was your respiratory therapist in December. Anything particular you remember that you liked about her?
I'm sorry, I do not remember.
How about Lindsay? She was Lindsay Arenas. She was your bedside nurse in December and January. Do you remember what it was you liked about her?
Yeah, I remember I told her about my mom's passing, and she was very compassionate, and I liked her because she was funny and she was nice to me.
Okay. On the next page, Clay, which is Trial Exhibit 2364-009. This continued with the list of people you liked. There's someone named Debbie. I'll let you know there's a nurse named Debbie Bill. She was in the pediatric ICU October 10th, 11th, and 12th. Do you remember what it was that you liked about her?
This would have been a different Debbie then because I did not list anyone from the PICU.
Okay. Do you remember who this Debbie was?
I'm sorry, I do not. The nurses, when they wrote their names on the board, it was usually just their first name and then their last initial.
Okay. The Billy, that was Billy, if you remember, was that Billy Cecil, your physical therapist?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Billy Cecil gave you 19 physical therapy sessions between October 9th, 2016 and January 4th, 2017. Do you remember what it was you liked about him?
I remember like little snippets of our therapy sessions. Again, most of these people I just listed names because I was trying to get out of the hospital, and I'm 10, so I'm thinking if they think I like you, then I'll get out.
Beneath that is Alicia, and we talked about she was the one that was with Kathy Bey when the photos were taken, right?
Yes,
And then below that is someone named Nicole. She was another nurse in the pediatric ICU. Do you think that was her, or do you think
it
it might have
was
been
a
someone else?
different one for certain, but I'm not sure. I don't remember Nicole, but I don't remember listing anyone from the PICU.
Okay. There's a Sylvia. Do you remember who that Sylvia was?
I do. I had her on a few occasions. We didn't really talk much, but she was friendly.
Okay. Do you remember, she was your nurse for about 14 shifts from October through December 27th? Does that seem right?
That seems about right.
Okay. And I think you told us about a nurse named Sam that you also liked?
Yes.
Okay. There was, let me ask you about trial exhibit 2364-11. You were asked about the things you liked while you were at All Children's, and you listed good nurses. We talked about, I think, 11 of them, but you mentioned good doctors. Do you remember which doctors you liked?
Again, I just listed that in hopes of getting out. You have to remember the hospital is the one who gave me this My Care journal. It wasn't something I had brought from home. And I was under the impression that they were going to be reading it after I completed it. So I thought if I made them out to seem good, then they would consider releasing me back to my family.
You listed RJ's Activity Center. Do you remember what you liked about going to RJ's?
Yeah, that's where I met the girl Natalie.
What types of activities did you do in RJ's?
There were arts and crafts activities, and then at one point there were these, I call them the bead ladies, because they would physically come up to the room and help you make bracelets. I actually made some for my mom.
During your hospitalization, you did receive sacramental rites, correct?
At a certain point, yes.
Okay. You received sacramental rites from not just your outside preach from your father at your church, but you also received them from Father Coover at All Children's. Do you remember that?
Would that be Tom is his first name, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's how I knew him, Father Tom, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. I used his last name. I apologize.
It's all good, I just want to make sure.
Yeah, okay. Father Tom also administered on more than one occasion sacramental rites while you were at All Children's, right?
Yes, I think it was like once or twice.
And
But I just wanted to say the first time he came, he did not give me the sacrament, actually. It took, I think, about like a month until I was actually able to receive the body of Christ. And then he told me some things about his past, so I didn't end up seeing him again.
okay, the records I have show that you received sacramental rites at least twice from Father Tom. Does that seem accurate too?
Well, the first time he didn't show up with it, it was only the second time. So I did see him on 2 occasions, but it was only one occasion that I actually received the sacrament.
If we could go to Joint Exhibit 1001-1834. And at the bottom, the comments section. At least according to this, it said that Father Tom had visited you on both Saturday and Sunday and provided the sacramental rites on at least 2 of those occasions. Does that help refresh the time period for you?
Honestly, I am certain that it took at least a couple of weeks before I received the body. I know that for certain. I know that I visited with him, and again, the first time, he didn't have it, but it did take some time.
During your hospitalization, you had the chance to nominate a nurse for a Daisy Award, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, and what's a Daisy Award?
I think it's just like an award that you give to a nice nurse. You write somebody's name down.
Okay. Let me show you exhibit, actually, this is not in evidence yet, so if I could hand it to the witness. May I approach?
You may
it?
approach,
Thank you, Your Honor.
but show it to Mr. Anderson first.
That'd be good.
Thank you, sir. On the second page of the exhibit, Maya, maybe you could help me with your handwriting and tell me what you wrote about your nomination. Well, first, who did you nominate for a Daisy Award?
It was that Lindsay I said earlier that was nice.
And what were your reasons for nominating Nurse Lindsay for a Daisy Award?
I could take the word nice, I see. Sorry, it's going to take me a minute to read this handwriting. I know it's my own, but it's very messy.
Sure, take your time.
Okay, I said fast and super nice. The reason I mentioned fast was that in the PICU, if you remember, Ashley Sumner, she would always yell at me to wait to use the restroom. So when nurses actually took the time to answer my call and take me to the restroom, I was very appreciative of that. And then she was nice. She didn't yell at me. And actually, the example I used here was I used the bathroom or anything. She will come as fast as possible. It's actually quite sad that that's what I appreciated because I feel like that should be standard for every patient, even in the PICU.
Let me ask you a little bit about the photographs. Are you aware that the photographs that we showed, the ones that were taken before you could go to court, you remember those?
Yes.
You are aware that there was a second set of photographs taken after you returned from court to document the differences?
The truth is, I feel like I would have remembered that, and I don't have any recollection of a second set of photos being taken of me.
So at least as you sit here today, you don't remember whether two sets of photos were taken, but it's entirely possible there were two sets. Is that fair?
I really don't think there is two sets. There was only one set taken, Kathy and Alicia. I remember a group of doctors coming into my room and asking if I would be ready for the second set, and I told them, no, I don't want to, and they didn't do it.
Okay. And I guess the reason I ask is the photos that the jury were shown, do you know whether those were all taken at one time or whether they in fact reflect photos taken before court and photos taken after?
To my recollection, it was that one set. I was changing from my pajamas to a court outfit.
And I guess you wore a dress to court, if you remember.
I think my uncle may have brought a dress or something, yes.
So let me transition a little bit with you after you got out of All Children's, okay? And we all had the chance to meet Rachel DeYoung, your therapist.
Yes.
Okay. It sounds like from a time frame, and you would be finishing sixth grade, although doing it virtually, from January 2017 when you were out of All Children's until August 2017. What you did to make your recovery was physical therapy, and that was it. Fair?
No, I did the warm water therapy as well, and I believe I was seeking counseling at the time to help with coping with my mom's passing as well as my disease.
So from that period of time, January through August of 2017, physical therapy, warm water therapy, and cognitive therapy with grief counseling. Is that fair?
Yes.
And that plus your courage to work through the pain, was able to get you to a point that from the time of your discharge from All Children's in January, that by the time school started in August, which would now be going into sixth grade, that you were able to get out of the wheelchair and be on crutches. Is that right?
I was on crutches, yes.
Okay. From that time that you shed your wheelchair, you haven't had to use it again for ambulation. Is that fair?
No, but again, I still have pain. There's days where I literally stay in bed all day, and it's not just a single day, I'm talking days on end.
So seventh grade comes around, and that would be August 2018 through May 2019, okay? You were off crutches by that summer, correct?
Correct.
And then, if I recall, what you told me was you actually went back into seventh grade and picked phys ed as an elective.
Yes, so sixth grade, it was required that I take it, which was weird because I was on crutches, but I just did physical therapy exercises up on the stage. And then seventh grade, I did start PE because, you're walking. It's like the first time you've ever walked in such a long time. Obviously, the first thing you want to do is play.
So if I understand what you're telling the jury, by eighth grade, you were participating in phys ed with no restrictions, correct?
Not with no restrictions. There were tests that we had to do, physical tests that I think the county is just required to do. One of the tests is running a mile, which seems really it doesn't seem very difficult, but I was unable to do it because of an asthma flare-up. And as well as I didn't have the physical ability at that time, Even though I was able to walk, it doesn't mean I could run for long distances, like a mile.
By eighth grade, you were fully participating in all sports, true?
Well, not all the sports. I was like figure skating or gymnastics or ballet, but in I don't think I took PE in eighth grade. I think it was just seventh.
In the eighth grade, you were president of the choir?
I'm sorry, what was that?
President of the choir.
Yes.
And you were president of Students Against Drunk Driving?
Students working against tobacco.
Okay. I gotcha. SWAT. You were National Junior Honor Society?
Yes, I was the president of that.
You were back scuba diving?
I believe so, yes. I got my scuba certification.
Okay. And you don't recall having any CRPS flare-ups in the sixth, seventh, or eighth grade, correct?
Nothing to a point where I wasn't able to walk or anything, but it's not fair to say that I didn't have pain, because I definitely did, and my dad heard a lot of that.
Okay. Yeah, and the reason I ask is because when we had a chance to talk, and I had asked you whether you had any flare-ups in sixth, seventh, or eighth grade, you had told me no. Is that true?
Right, that's what I'm saying. It's not a flare-up to the point where I couldn't do anything, but I did still have pain.
And and this was, the time period of eighth grade would have been August 2017 August 7, 2017 to May 2018, and then August 2018 to May 2019 would be seventh grade, and then August 2019 to May 2020 would be eighth grade, right?
Yes.
And then just to get a sense of your workout routine, the recovery that you were able to make, by August 28th, 2020, you had talked to me a little bit about your workout routine. Do I recall correctly that you were getting up around 4:30 in the morning for your workouts?
Yeah, so at the time, I still struggled with sleep and everything, so I woke up early anyway. It's just like an internal alarm clock. So I thought I would use that time because I was in school. I would use that time to work out, and then I would go to bed as early as I can following school. But I was really dedicated to keeping my strength and maintaining my muscle tone.
And it looks like by then, through your dedication to this and the recovery, you were able to do about 5.5 miles every morning.
I did about 5 laps, but I don't think the entire circle is a mile. It's a little bit less. I don't know the exact.
may have been closer to 4 miles every morning.
Yeah.
And you were also able to do high-intensity interval training as well?
Right, but not for prolonged periods of time. Again, it was just, challenging myself.
And then unfortunately, in August 2020, it looks like you broke your finger playing sports.
I did. I caught a football in a weird way.
Okay. It's happened to all of us. So you had surgery to repair your broken finger, is that right?
I got a pin placed.
Okay. And fortunately, that did not cause any CRPS flares or relapse, correct?
Correct. So not every injury is going to bring on a CRPS relapse. It's just not the nature of it. I mean, some people are more sensitive, but for me, there's been times I've been injured, and there's been times I've endured stress and haven't had a relapse, and that's normal too.
And so, again, on the calendar, from the period of time from when you came out of All Children's in January of 2017 until this time when you talked about the broken finger in August 2020, the only medications that you were taking were Flonase and Claritin. Is that fair?
Well, I was discharged with about 14 at All Children's Hospital, so I took those until they weren't prescribed anymore. And then slowly I was weaned off of pretty much everything. And it's like different medications. I have one for sleep that I didn't mention, and that's my bad.
Okay, so for the period after you finished the medications that you were discharged with from All Children's, that period of time, 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, the medications that you were taking would have been for allergies and to help sleep. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. You talked about returning to figure skating. You mentioned doing a jump called a salchow. What's that?
It's a special kind of jump. I really can't explain it in terms that would make sense, but I was working on it, yeah. This was in high school.
Okay. Is it like where you drop your skate into the ice and flip in the air, or?
You do pick your toe into the ice, and then you do a little twirl in the air.
Okay. You won a skating competition?
I was against 5-year-olds, if I'm being completely honest. It's so embarrassing, but my skill level was not of that it used to be.
Well, you got to take credit for it. You won a competition. Okay. Fast forwarding to high school, by 2022, you were a sophomore in high school, right?
Yes.
Okay. And you're still doing physically better in 2022 than you were before you went into All Children's. Is that fair?
Yes, I didn't have an active relapse at the time.
Okay. And then 2023, you would have finished at the end of the summer, your junior year in high school. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. And that's when you got a job at Cracker Barrel?
I did, yes.
And then it looks like, you in general, you're going to the gym about 5 days a week?
I tried my best, but most of it was just walking on the treadmill. And then when I started working, I didn't go to the gym as much.
Okay. And then in terms of medications, again, in your junior year, it looks like you were taking Claritin, Flonase, a sleep aid, and seeing a doctor for eczema. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. Let me ask you about some photos, and I'm just going to approach, if these are not in evidence yet, but I was just going to ask about some authentication.
Show them to Mr. Anderson first, please.
Yes, sir.
Just for authentication, is what I understand.
Yes. May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Maya, at the bottom of the photos, there's those things you've probably gotten used to. They're like exhibit numbers. Do you see? Okay.
Yeah.
The first one is Exhibit 001. Do you know when that photo was taken?
I don't know the exact date, but it was fairly recent.
Do you know if that was part of the People magazine photo shoot?
It was.
Okay. What about photo 002?
Yes.
Was that also part of the People magazine photo shoot?
Yes.
And what about 003? Do you know when that was taken?
It was also part of that.
What about 007? Just skipping ahead a couple.
Yep. That's not part of that shoot. This was taken at a different time.
Okay. Do you know approximately when that photo was taken?
I have the date in my phone, but I don't want to make any assumptions.
Okay. What about 008?
That was part of the People magazine.
Okay. What about 009?
That was in New York at the Tribeca Film Festival. I don't know the exact date again. I don't want to make a mistake.
Okay. May I retrieve the documents, Your Honor?
You may.
Yep.
Have you seen Dr. Barr as a patient since you were discharged from All Children's?
I don't remember.
Okay. How about Dr. Spiegel? Have you seen him since you've left All Children's? And just, I'm sure it's hard to remember everything. He was the one who did the hyperbaric
Yeah,
oxygen
yeah.
treatments.
No, I haven't. Again, I'm very afraid of going to doctors, and unfortunately, I think it's a fear I'm going to be living with.
Okay.
I'm sorry, what was the end?
I said, unfortunately, I think it's going to be a fear I'll be living with.
One moment, Your Honor. Famous words, last question. Tough one. When we last spoke, you were telling me you were thinking Duke or Florida State. Have you narrowed it down?
I have not. Now, I think my options have even gotten bigger. I'm thinking about, I don't know, maybe New York.
Any particular college or field of study? My kids hate when I ask that, but I got to do it too.
No, not yet. I'm keeping my options open.
Okay. Best of luck to you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Mr. Anderson.
We could pull up, let's see, 101, 1001, 1930, please. Now, I am, through these different notations they had you make on your, what was it called, the My Plan?
My special care journal.
All right, they gave that to you,
Correct.
and they were pretty insistent that they wanted you to fill that out?
Yes, the nurse who gave it to me before, so I went to her and I was complaining that I haven't seen my mom and I haven't been able to talk to her, and she suggested that I write a note to my mom, so she came back with a special care journal.
But at the same time that they were trying to get you to talk about them in a good light, you were telling them that you were in too much pain and you hate this hospital. Is that right?
Sustained.
That's very true. Oh, sorry, I'm
Hold on,
sorry.
hold on.
I'm
I'll
sorry.
rephrase.
Thank you.
At this same period of time, if you look down here to this note right next to the bottom, did the hospital document how you were truly feeling about them?
Yes.
All right, let's pull up then 100-0313. 1001-0313. Okay, this is from November 5th, and here you are telling them what? That you want to go home, and you did not want to participate in rec activities?
Your Honor, again, we object to the reading of the question.
Sustained.
what, if anything, were you telling them about your desire to be there and to do this stuff?
Well, I know from experience that physical therapy that I've had in the past, like very intensive and not at my pace and tailored to my needs, actually ends up hurting me as well as my CRPS.
Let's pull up 1001-0510. That's 1001. Isn't it? Okay. And if we could scroll down. And what did you tell them, as documented in this note, about what your stay was like?
Could I have 1 second to read it first?
Yep.
Okay. This definitely accurately depicts my mindset at the time. You know, everything that I thought they were doing was hurting me, and even though I was telling them what the right course of action could be, they were not willing to listen and instead actually laughed at me. There is an instance where a doctor literally laughed in my face.
Well, while they were documenting you saying this in their records, did it appear almost like they had a plan to develop evidence that you really did secretly like them? What, if anything, did it appear they were trying?
I'm sustaining the objection.
What, if anything, did it appear to you they were trying to do with all of these notebooks and tell us what's good and tell us why you love it here so much?
You overruled on that one.
Well, I think it's important to note that with the My Special Care Journal, you all did not see the entirety of the journal. There's a page with saying like things I liked about the hospital, but there's also a page that depicts what I did not like about the hospital, and the page is full.
And along those lines, you had been to a lot of outpatient doctors, is that right?
Correct. Are you referring to the John Hopkins?
Mhm,
Yes,
yes.
yes, I have.
Mhm. And so when you were referring to some of the doctors here, were you referring to those outpatient doctors that were trying to help you?
Yes, I believe so.
And were the outpatient doctors questioning your CRPS or accepting your CRPS?
They were generally very understanding of my CRPS.
And insofar as whether Father Tom was appropriate for you, did he make you comfortable or uncomfortable?
Initially, he made me comfortable. I confided in him and I told him about my situation at John Hopkins All Children's Hospital and the way I was being treated and how I wanted to go home. Then he relayed to me that he had a very traumatic experience of his own. I don't know, he didn't give me a time frame, but he said in the past. And I come to find out it was something extremely inappropriate, which I don't know if I'm
So
supposed
did
to
you
share.
want your priest that you regularly knew and trusted?
Yes, after finding out what he had done and the things he had, I definitely wanted my priest back.
Did they ever explain to you why they were going after your mom for this, for these medications instead of the doctors, licensed Florida doctors, experts in the area, that, can I get the question out?
What's the legal basis?
Obviously,
Well, let's work on our pronoun usage. Let's eliminate pronouns.
did the Johns Hopkins doctors that you spoke to ever explain why they were going after your mom if they had a problem with your treatment as opposed to the doctors prescribing it?
Objecting, I apologize, Your Honor, would have for approaching.
Please don't answer that, Mrs. Kowalski. objection is overruled. Ms. Kowalski, you may answer the question.
Can you repeat the question one more time?
Sure. Did any of the doctors at the hospital ever explain to you why they were accusing your mom of these things, if it indeed was all about the prescriptions and the treatments you were getting, instead of the doctors, licensed Florida doctors that were prescribing it?
Same objection and argument.
Overruled, you can answer.
They never directly explained to me.
Does that complete your questioning?
Right, Judge, but we have the proper obviously.
Okay, so you're finished with redirect?
I am.
Any recross?
No, thank you, Your Honor.
And members of the jury, do you have any questions? Have we received all the questions? We're going to start. You stated documentation shows additional photos of Maya Kowalski were taken upon Maya's return from court, before and after photo documentation. Are you aware if there are any after photos in your medical records at Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital?
To my knowledge, the photos weren't even entered into the medical records, so there's no proof of, as far as I'm concerned, of a second set of photos.
Did the jury hear correctly? The series of photos before court are not in your medical record. Please clarify.
Yes, so when I talked to Kathy Bey, I asked for her to only put them into the medical records because it was my understanding that that was a secure place where only doctors can access that, as opposed to anyone who had access to the camera that they took the photos on. She told me that she had put them there, but as of last weekend, I figured out that that was not the case, and I was infuriated because she made it seem like she was entering them into the medical base.
The next question. During your stay at Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital, you were at some time not able to view TV and only have a ticking wall clock was available to you. While you were at Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital, did the staff inquire if they could assist you in any way, such as adjusting the TV channel, the volume, bringing an item closer or farther, adjust your bed? And this is excluding the 48-hour period.
Gotcha. So this was during the PICU where I wasn't allowed, well, I didn't have access to the TV. So I really just sat there and watched the clock, and it was extremely depressing. I did have the call button, but for a nurse to not even want to assist me to use the restroom, I was highly doubtful that she would go out of her way to turn on the TV. She was very aggressive with her answers about me using the restroom, and most of the time she declined. Therefore, I didn't want to waste my request on pleasure activities like watching TV versus necessities like using the bathroom.
When it comes to, quote, creature comforts, end quote, were you made to feel comfortable, or were you made to or just felt that you were in a hostile place?
The creature, is that about the stuffed animals, I would assume?
I'm assuming it would include stuffed animals, but any sort of creature comforts that would make you feel comfortable.
Okay, so there was a point where my dad was able to bring some of my stuffed animals at home, and those did provide me comfort, but obviously I would prefer my family there.
As hospitals may, and this is if you know, as hospitals may and do use both colors and even symbols to identify patient conditions and status treatments and restrictions, are you aware of any photos that may reveal these placards on your room?
So my dad, I don't believe was allowed to take photos of things outside of the room because of, it might have been a HIPAA violation to other patients in adjacent rooms. It was just standard protocol, I guess. But again, I did see the name tags of other patients there, and they looked very different. So they had stickers on theirs, but it was like stickers of princesses or trucks, but mine were circular, solid colored stickers. And again, I asked what they meant, and they wouldn't tell me.
The next question from the jury. You stated Dr. Kornberg recommended first boots to straighten feet, and if that failed, then surgically breaking and setting your feet straight. First, on that line, you said the boots were tried but failed. Is that correct?
Yes, because the dystonia only advanced. As there was more agitation of the nerves, it just got worse.
Did your dad, Jack Kowalski, or your mom, Beata Kowalski, or you agree to boots?
We did agree to trying the boots. Even I agreed at the time because I did not know I had CRPS and I didn't know that it would ultimately hurt me. They were painful, but I wasn't against trying it.
It seems the surgical remedy was not done. Do you know why the surgery was not done?
I know my parents immediately, when that statement left Dr. Kornberg's mouth, they objected to that. They didn't think that was the right course of action and they wanted to wait.
And the balance of the questions I cannot ask. Okay, the next sheet. I'm not asking Ms. Kowalski these questions, but members of the jury, there's been another request about dates relative to the court orders, and I will, in the future, get that to you, I promise. Okay, the next series of questions. How long did Dr. Kirkpatrick spend with you before issuing the CRPS diagnosis?
It was multiple hours, and this stays true with all of the doctors I've seen for a full examination of CRPS. I would argue it was about, I know it was, most of them, it was around the range of like 5 full hours. And not only did they just do the examination, but they also spoke to my parents about the symptoms and me individually as a patient.
Was this the same day, i.e. the date he issued the CRPS diagnosis, was this the same day that you met him?
I believe so, yes.
You said that ketamine was effective. It must have been a relief to experience some relief. Did you find that as the effects wore off, that the contrast made it more painful?
That's a good question. I think I was so used to pain at that point, and I was so used to it coming back that I didn't really notice, like, I don't think the contrast itself made it worse because I've experienced the contrast pain before as well, if that makes sense. So I was familiar with the pain. I don't think the contrast itself made it worse. I think it was just whether there was a trigger involved that made my CRPS worse, or if it was just a matter of the drug not working as long as we would have liked it to.
You mentioned in your testimony that you had open dialogue about treatment and that your parents did not pressure you. Can you describe a treatment you discussed? How did you articulate that as a child, and what specifically did you turn down?
So this would align more with the whole Mexico treatment situation. The doctor spoke to my parents first about whether they were considering that as an option. And then the doctor spoke with me individually to just check and see how I felt after explaining all the risks. Obviously, he dumbed it down a little bit to a level a 10-year-old could understand, so I can make an informed decision. And again, because of the pain, with it being so terrible, I decided to go forth with it. And my parents listened to me and ultimately decided to make the trip.
Okay. Dr. Cantu mentioned that even touching a CRPS patient could result in lesions. Has that happened for you at all?
So every CRPS patient is different. For me personally, my CRPS wasn't a thing for me. It's something I haven't noticed. I did have lesions, but they didn't sprout from just a touch.
Now, the next question in that series I cannot ask, but the following question is, please elaborate how you overheard the nurse speaking to your mom. Where were you standing? Why were you there? And how did you know it was your parent?
So I learned about that conversation. I wasn't actually near the nurse or I actually don't even know who it was, but I know it was somebody at the hospital because my mom had called the hospital itself. I learned about the conversation through an audio that I listened to.
Describe how opioids make you feel.
I honestly don't really remember the feeling of like opioids. I know I took them initially early on, but they didn't do anything for my pain at the time. I didn't notice, like there's nothing notable about them that I could pick out and tell you, and I apologize, it was a really long time ago. But I know that the ketamine worked and I know the opioids didn't.
Next question is, are you Catholic?
Yes, so it's a little interesting. So I grew up Catholic, and after my mom passed, I became a little less religious just because I didn't really understand how God could take someone from my life so important, but eventually I came back to my faith, and I understand that was just part of my grieving process.
Do you carry a rosary?
I have one in my pocket.
When was your last mass?
I actually haven't gone to church in a while, and I'll explain that. I used to go to Epiphany Cathedral. It's in Venice, and the four of us have gone as a family, my mom, Kyle, my dad, and I. We did go back multiple times after her passing, but it's just very difficult because you get looks from people, and they know that your mom's not there, and it just doesn't feel right without her. There's a lot of activities like that, and that's part of the reason I stopped skating as well.
When is your last confession and communion?
Last communion, that was more recent. I don't have the date on that, but someone came to my house, and this is kind of weird, but my grandma, she's very Catholic. She lives in Illinois. She'll send me communion through the mail from her church, and it's blessed and whatnot, and I'll take that. Confession, I have not had confession in a minute, and again, that's because it's at the same church I used to go to with my mom.
The next page of questions, I'm only going to be able to ask 2 of the 4 on this one. The question, relevance to Lent. Did the chapel shown have a tabernacle? Did you ever see the Eucharist?
So there was at one point where I was given the Eucharist. It was that's when I was talking about the body. Like it was a month after the priest had come and visit me, but I didn't see a place in the chapel. Don't know how to say that, but wait, the big word that you just said, it was not in that chapel. No.
How did you become aware of diagnosis after your mom passed?
Diagnosis of,
I'm just reading the question.
yeah, you're good. Trying to think of what diagnosis that could be
Well,
in reference to.
Did you find out a diagnosis as a patient while you were as a patient?
Oh, okay, I see. Okay, I got it. So, it was only after I had left the hospital that I was able to review the medical records, and that's when I saw the conversion disorder and fictitious disorder. When I was in the hospital, I just had to assume that's what, I didn't know the technical term because I've never heard of such a thing before. But the way that they were treating me, I knew that they thought I was making it up. So I knew whatever they thought was going on, it was a disorder in which I was making it up. And then when I reviewed the medical records, I was finally able to attach a name to what they were thinking.
The next question is a clarification. In 2020, when you had that relapse and you were in the hospital for approximately 1 week, were you at Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital?
No, I believe the name of the hospital is Arnold Palmer in Orlando.
Was another port installed, or was there already a prior port?
So there was no port, I just had the nose tube.
Did Kathy Bey console you when your mom passed?
She did not like touch me or anything. She just said she was sorry, and she said she had another patient to see and left the room. That was probably the only time I saw her not really wanting to stay in the room.
Given the answer, I'm not going to ask the balance of that question. Okay, the last question from the jury. Do you know if you discontinued use of opioids that you were prescribed the times of alternative treatments such as the ketamine treatment in Mexico or the hyperbaric chambers, et cetera?
Yeah, I think there was some testimony about after Cantu, there was no need for any opioids because the treatment had worked so well that my doctors at home who were comfortable prescribing them, they decided to stop prescribing them because of my progress.
Mr. Anderson, any follow-up?
Take it then that Ms. Beatty actually did not stay to try to console you and make you feel better about this.
Same objection, Your Honor.
Overruled. You can answer.
Can you just, I'm sorry, one more time?
Kathy Beatty did not hang around to console you, make you feel better. She just said, "I'm sorry," and left.
Yes.
You were asked about creature comforts, and I think you were talking about your dad bringing you stuffed animals. The question might have been, did the hospital give you creature comforts, make you feel comfortable?
I do not recall. I know I did arts and crafts and such, but nothing, I don't know. They did not give me any stuffed animals or anything like that. Those were all from home.
And then there was a question about the surgery to break your legs. Have you learned enough now about CRPS to know whether going in with someone who has CRPS, breaking their legs, then trying to pin them back would have any beneficial effect?
That would not be beneficial whatsoever, no.
Let's see. And as to Dr. Kirkpatrick now, did he follow you for several weeks, months after the first visit?
I believe we kept in touch with him, yes.
All right. And did he continue to keep up with how your symptoms were doing? In other words, was it helping or not?
Yeah, the improvements, especially after Mexico, he was one of the first people to know.
Well, I think the jurors are wondering, did Dr. Kirkpatrick continue to mentally challenge the CRPS diagnosis such that, you know, if things didn't clear up or got worse, maybe it wasn't CRPS?
Object to the leading, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Was Dr. Kirkpatrick sure it was CRPS, and why?
He was sure it was CRPS because of his in-depth examination, his observations, and the symptoms that aligned. I mean, there were so many questions I had to answer, and then he also questioned my parents. And he's seen a bunch of patients before, both pediatric and adult, so he was really good at identifying that. His whole place is a research institution as well, so he really understands CRPS.
Thank you.
Defense, any follow-up? Oh, sorry.
There's some confusion on the timing of the port for the infusion port. And I ask it in a strange order because I was asking it with
Yeah.
the Arnold Palmer. Just reminded me. In any event, was the port that you were testifying to that was involved with the infusions of the ketamine in the spring of 2016 as opposed to, well after at Arnold Palmer?
The port was placed after Kirkpatrick, after Cantu, but before Hannah, or around the time of Dr. Hannah.
And it was to facilitate the ketamine infusions?
Yeah.
Overruled, you can answer.
Yes, and that's what we told the doctors at Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital, and they installed it.
Now, are we finished?
I believe so.
Defense, anything further?
Briefly, Your Honor. Maya, just on the photos, there's the two sets that you were asked about. Again, do you know, if you recall, whether one was taken before you went to court and one was taken after?
Objection, asked and answered, and proper predicate.
Okay. Overruled, you can answer it.
Again, to my recollection, it was just one set of photos. I really don't remember the second set being taken.
You were asked about when you learned about certain diagnoses. Do you remember whether your parents shared with you what the diagnosis was coming from Lurie Children's Hospital?
I know that they recommended me for intensive PT, and that's what we did. I had heard that other doctors in the past have thought that it may be in my head, but they never confirmed the diagnosis.
Okay, and I guess that's the reason I'm asking you. I'm sure, you've had a lot of growing up to do throughout this trial, talk with Mr. Anderson. I don't want to know about that. But back then in 2015, were you told about what all of the diagnoses were coming out of Lurie Children's? Did your parents tell you that?
Again, I knew as much as I did. I knew that they weren't entirely sure, and I know that they may have believed that there was a psychiatric component. However, there wasn't.
How about from Tampa General, when you left Tampa General in around end of August 2015, did you know either from the doctors or from your parents what their diagnoses were?
I know Bonnie Rice, the nurse, she suspected conversion disorder.
Okay. And just last couple questions. Do you recall that there was so your bed in the pediatric ICU, we use the word PICU, but PICU, your bed in the pediatric ICU had a call light with a remote control to your TV, right?
I know of the call light, yes.
Okay. It also contained a remote control for you to watch TV.
I believe those were separate.
Okay. You had access to a TV in the pediatric ICU.
There was a TV, yes.
And there was a TV that you could access with remote control in the EEG monitoring room?
I'm having a hard time remembering that one, but I know about the PICU.
Okay. If I represented to you that you had a TV with a remote control in the EEG room, would you have any reason to dispute it?
Well, I know that there were TVs in the rooms, but it just depends on how far away the remote was from my bed.
Okay. Do you remember that the remote control to the TV was with the same paddle as the call light?
I remember on floor 7, yes.
Okay. And whether it was the same in the EEG room, you don't remember one way or the other?
I don't.
Okay. I appreciate your time.
Members of the jury, do you have any further follow-up questions? So we're finished with questioning